Today's episode of In the Trenches is brought to you by System 12 Guitar Method. Sign up today at ryanroxie.com.
In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.
Hello, and welcome to another live stream episode of In the Trenches. I am your host, Ryan Roxie. What is happening? My voice sounds a little bit low today. That's cool. All right. I'm loving it. What am I doing here? I'm getting ready for tour. And I was telling our guests before I went on that this is my last week of just like non-maintenance. All right. You know, next week when you see us out there on the Alice Cooper tour, I'll trim the beard up. Maybe I'll put a little bit of, I don't know, pencil in there. I don't know. You know, smoke and mirrors, folks, smoke and mirrors. But that's what we are here at In the Trenches. We're all smoke and mirrors. And if you are not seeing us, that means you are listening to us on one of the audio broadcasts. Thank you very much for doing that. But where we really want you is in our YouTube official channel. That's Ryan Roxie Official on our YouTube. Hit that subscribe button right there if this is your first time watching our podcast, because we love for you to not just see us, but be part of the live chat that each and every week is bubbling with comments, and it's a cool community out there. And like I say, when we go out on the road, we take that community out on the road with us. But if you can't make it out to a show because you're halfway around the world, you always have us here in the trenches, and we become one big family through show after show and rock show after rock show. So let's dive into it. What do you say? Because today is one of those days where I get to talk about one of my favorite things, Alice Cooper history. Why is it one of my favorite things? Because I'm part of it. And our guest today knows a thing or two about the ACB legacy. So much so, we are here to talk about the documentary, Alice Cooper, Killer at 50, The Tale of the Octopus and the Snake. But that's not all we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about their media company that they have. Her and her husband have a media company that they just put together a few years ago called the ROX Network that's doing a really good work. Stuff like what we're doing right now, podcast, trying to get the word of rock and roll music out there and carrying the torch, if you will. And of course, we might dip our toe into the world of the occult. So would you please welcome into the trenches, Carrie-Anne Grove. Hello, Carrie.
Hello, Ryan, and a very good morning to you.
Well, is it morning for you? Because you're in the UK, right?
No, it's just coming up to a very early evening for us.
All right.
So
I was going to say this Roxy old fashioned doesn't scream good morning. It's not a Bloody Mary. Let me tell you that, folks. It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Exactly. That's what I always say.
You are in the UK, Carrie.
Indeed.
And I can tell you are in your studio right now
Yes.
that you have with a ROX Media Group. I'm going to talk about ROX Media Group, but we like to do this thing called going back to get forward, because we have to find a little bit out about the past so we can concentrate on the present and the future. So, Vic, what do you say? Go ahead. I'm almost professional, and I'm right on it, on the animation and everything. I think I even got cut off because I wasn't expecting to go that quickly going back to get forward. But the fact that you are in the UK, you were born in the West Midlands. So
That's right.
Explain to me where that is.
Right. If I say to you Birmingham, right in the center of the United Kingdom, literally Wolverhampton, where I was born and live, is the exact center of the UK.
Okay, so all you really had to say then, you could have just said KK Downing, and you could have just said, hey, it's where Judas Priest is from. It's where Black Sabbath is from.
And it's where KK does still live. He lives literally 30, 40 minutes away from me.
Wow. And Wolverhampton as well. There's, I believe, the guitars from The Move.
Ron Wood. Yeah.
Ron Wood lives or is from around that area, because I
He
remember
he is,
playing
yeah.
a club in Wolverhampton where they actually had a Ron Wood room, a Ron Wood sort of lounge, if you will, that had a bunch of pictures around him, of him around.
It's
And
still there today.
there it is. You know that club I'm talking about?
Oh, very well. It's called the Robin 2 in Bilston. And it's Bilston's sort of part of Wolverhampton. It's a small town that's part of Wolverhampton. And although they're going to really hate me to say that, but, the Robin 2 is a legendary gig round these here parts, because there was a Robin 1 years ago, and now there's a Robin 2. Yes, his bar's still there where you can sort of go for a drink before gigs. But there's also Noddy Holder's bar inside the venue, because Noddy Holder was the singer with Slade, and he lives down the road from us as well.
So it's a potpourri of all the bands I love, all the different type of styles, from heavy to more glam oriented. Is that where you cut your teeth with rock and roll? When did you fall in love with rock and roll and reporting on it and just writing about it? When was it that moment?
I do have my elder brother, William, to thank for that. As a small child, I was your typical small child into pop, and whatever was in the charts at the time was Flavour of the Month, as far as I was concerned. And then my brother sort of gave an initiation ceremony into the world of rock. He handed me Thin Lizzy, Jailbreak, on vinyl, and sort of handed it me as if to say, "The banner is now yours, little one."
It was. He was passing the torch. I love it.
Because by then he was interested in girls and partying and the geeking out on all the album sleeves and who recorded what where. Wasn't interesting to him anymore. So I inherited his record collection, and then it just snowballed. I just thought, I need to know everything anybody's ever done anywhere, and I need to own it.
It must have been pretty cool to be sort of right there in the mecca of many of those bands that you had their records in your brother's collection that you had inherited. They're literally your next door neighbors.
Yeah, you'd walk around the shopping precinct of Wolverhampton, and literally walking straight past you would be members of Slade, or you sort of half look as if to say, "No, it can't be," but it was.
Well, it sounds so much more scholarly these days to say historian, but would you consider yourself a rock historian at this point?
I've become one over the years. Yes, I was enthusiast was what I would have called myself before, but over the years, I suppose I have now become an historian. Yeah, because all that knowledge is still bouncing around in there.
If you had a globe and you called yourself an historian, you get all these accolades and credit. But if you just have a Thin Lizzy album that's original pressing and you say you're a rock historian, maybe you don't get as much. But you should. We should have a university of classic rock, and maybe perhaps you will be an honorary dean there. What do you say?
I do totally agree. So much of the history of rock has become watered down, and sort of we get Chinese whispers these days, and it's not really. People don't necessarily remember what it was like back then, whereas people of a certain age group do remember what these bands were like, what the scene was like, what the venues were like, and it's people like myself and ROX and other organizations like us that, yes, we do promote new bands, especially ones coming from the area.
That's
but
great.
We also make sure that the history is still very much remembered.
Exactly.
We were part of the Home Metal scene, which was a celebration a few years ago, which celebrated literally the birthplace of heavy metal, which was the Black Country in Birmingham.
Nice. And it wasn't just the album covers and the albums themselves that were inspiring you. It was some of the people. And we were lucky enough to have journalist Mick Wall on recently on the podcast on In the Trenches. And if anybody out there is listening and wants to check out our episode of Mick Wall in the Trenches, there he is, folks. But wait a second, he does not like to show himself pictures of him being shaved, Vic. Why did you put up a shaved picture? He likes him like when he has a little bit of scruff. All right. I hope he doesn't see it. You know what, Mick? Sorry. That was Vic's fault. He put up an unshaven photo of you. But guess what? Shaven or unshaven? I mean, I'm unshaven right now. It doesn't matter. The thing is, was Mick Wall one of those influences that perhaps inspired you to follow in the footsteps to become a rock historian?
Without a doubt. I was around at the time when Sounds magazine and sort of evolved into Kerrang as we know and love it these days. And we had writers like Mick, like Malcolm Dome, God rest his soul, who died a couple of years ago now, and Crusher Jewel, and the photographers at the time had a way of capturing the moment instead of doing a photo shoot where the background's carefully chosen and everything's just so for the media. It was very much, let's do a photograph of Ozzy Osbourne in a dress on the toilet, because he would.
He definitely would, and I remember that photo. Vic, do you have that photo?
Yeah.
I know right now. I can picture. Even though I can't see him, he's scrambling the internet to get a picture of that right now. But I'm sure we'll get it in a couple minutes when we're not talking about
so
Ozzy Osbourne.
If you can't find it, I'd be very surprised.
That's funny.
It was that wild and crazy rock and roll way of reporting, of catching the bands right there and then, in all the craziness that was going on, and it made it sound so exciting. And so I want to be a musician. I want that. I want to do that. And
did you ever play? Are you a player a bit? You play guitar, right?
I play guitar, keyboards, a bass, and I sing. Still quite badly these days, but
nice explorer right there, boy. I like that one.
That was at sort of sequel to the Home of Metal, which was a celebration of Black Sabbath, because it marked their anniversary of 50 years.
Then you should have had an SG. What are you talking about? That's Tony's guitar, right?
Well, some young lad had got the SG, and I thought, well, I'll be gracious about it.
It's in the family. It's in the Gibson family. It's one of the big six.
And I must confess, I do prefer Explorers. I just find them. I find them easy to hold.
I call it the Gibson Big Six. I say the creme de la creme is the Les Paul. Then the Les Paul's brother is the SG. The Les Paul's grandfather, actually, I believe, is the 335.
Yeah,
that's three of them. And then we have kind of the new kids on the block, which we have the Flying V and the Explorer, which are very closely related, came out in the same year. And then the Firebird. So that's what I call the Gibson Big Six. And I'm glad you represented one of them. At one point, though, one of these bands that you were talking about that was running around, and Mick Wall and others were capturing the crazy rock and roll antics and moments of them, was obviously my boss, Alice Cooper. And he obviously had some sort of a strong impact on you, influence on you. Do you remember your first sort of taste of Alice Cooper?
Yeah. The first sort of the album that I mean, we were getting a lot of American rock through the UK during the 70s. So Alice Cooper, of course, had appeared on Top of the Pops, which was the music program in Britain. We didn't get out much, and so we were very aware of Alice Cooper's music, but Britain at the time was very single centric, so they were so concentrating on singles, and unless it happened to really hit big, we didn't get a chance to hear the new Alice Cooper songs. So it was very much a case of we need to get the albums. And the first one I actually bought was $1 Billion Babies.
Okay, so
yeah, and that one I just thought this is the epitome of the glam rock scene intermixing with the vaudeville, intermixing with all the darker rock that's coming out from Blue Oyster Cult and from Blue Cheer and Black Sabbath. And it was kind of molding it all into one package that you could say, yeah, I'm getting this. I dig this. And
so
I
from
was
there,
a fan ever since.
and from there, you were able to go back and check out some of the earlier records, which
Yeah.
obviously one of the biggest records that seemed to have a huge impact and influence on you was the 1972 album Killer. And you recently produced a documentary about that album, that said album Killer. There it is right there.
That's right,
Amazing, great songs on that. Under My Wheels being one of them. I just had that on one of my Instagram stories. And again, if you are listening to us on one of the audio broadcasts, we have a lot of nice visuals that are happening up here on our YouTube official channel. So we do want you to hit that subscribe button and go hang out in the live chat room and sort of ask your questions for Carrie. And if you have any questions, obviously about Alice Cooper's 1972 album Killer, two good authorities right here, because I think I've played almost every song off that album.
Fire away, and I'll do my best to answer if I can.
Well, you interviewed original drummer Neil Smith, and we were lucky again to have Neil Smith on the podcast as well earlier on. But tell us about this project and tell us about how this album, Alice Cooper, or this movie documentary, Alice Cooper Killer at 50, came about.
We were approached by Pale Wizard Records, and they have recently released a tribute covers album of the songs from Killer. And as soon as I heard one or two of the songs from the promo that I got sent, I thought, they've got it. It would have been easy to rehash Killer. It would have been easy to get a load of A-list musicians in, perform some tribute and sell it for megabucks. That would have been easy. But no, they got new hungry bands, just like Alice Cooper was hungry back then.
Absolutely.
That's the album cover right there, indeed. They're hungry for success, and they've still got that edge. And we just thought, we've got to do something with this. We've got to run with this, but take it further. It's no good just talking about this tribute album and then leaving it there, because especially the younger audiences, they might never really go back through Alice's catalogue and check out Killer and $1 Billion and Pretty's for You and see where it evolved into and evolved from.
Yeah.
So
see where the roots lie.
Yeah, because it was a product of the earlier stuff that Alice had done, because they were building up, I think, to Killer. You could hear it sort of coming through the earlier stuff, but almost as if he was being kept back by the record companies. And well, don't get too dark, don't get too heavy, because we're going to scare the shit out the radio. and I think by then, I think they were ready to say, this is going out as it is, and people are either going to dig it or they're not.
Well, I thought one of the best things about it was that on the radio, when you listen to the songs, it sounded like a lot of straight ahead garage band, sort of garage rock, if you will, kind of rough around the edges, Detroit influence, obviously.
No different
it had
from
that
MC5.
If I could compare it to any bands today, I would say it had a little bit of an indie / vibe to it, because, there's a little bit of Hives in there. There's a little bit of, heavier bands as well in it. Helicopters from I'm just picking up Swedish bands because right now I'm recording to you from the North Pole up here in Sweden. But, I feel that on the radio, they had that sort of rock and roll identity, but people hadn't seen him. And then once they saw him and they saw this whole visual element, it took it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I think once people, especially once they started to see the Alice Cooper show, stage show, that by this time was really starting to evolve, and Alice really got into his stride. I think it was the perfect time when the sort of visual cues of television was joining up with audio. I mean, this is years before MTV
Videos,
Golden Boys,
MVD, or
so
any type of those
they
videos,
hadn't
yeah.
seen this kind of thing other than Horror Vaudeville, which obviously inspires
Decades
Alice a
before
great deal.
social media, anything like that, of course. So, entitled Alice Cooper, Killer at 50, there's another subtext to it, The Tale of the Octopus and the Snake. Now,
Right.
because you got Neil Smith to be involved, I can only imagine that the octopus might have something to do with Neil Smith, because I know that Bob Ezrin has referred to Neil Smith as what it would be like if an octopus played drums. Now, can you explain that title a little bit further? The Tale of the Octopus and the Snake. Who's the octopus? We think we know. Who is the snake?
You're absolutely correct. And the octopus is indeed Neil Smith. And when you watched him drum, it was like an octopus. The way he sort of did this, and it almost rolled off from the cymbals onto the snares and back on. It's like an octopus because there's no discerning movement between rhythm and bass kick. This just seems to roll around. And
but if you listen to Neil explain it, Neil would say that he influenced the octopus, not the octopus influencing him. Just so you know. There he is.
Yeah, well, I think it was partly because it was very influenced by jazz and big band drumming, and they were great drumming showmen. As for the snake, you could say there's two meanings behind that.
Okay.
The one meaning being that the snake that's on the front of the album was indeed Neil Smith's pet snake. He used to talk.
I did not know that was his pet snake.
From the top of my head, I can't remember the snake's name. I know she was female, and I know she had a girl's name. And it was the snake that toured with Alice for many years.
We've had a lot of different snakes that have done it. Boa Derek was one. A bunch of different snake names over the years. But I did not know that was his pet snake.
Yeah. And
so was it Neil that got Alice into that basically gave his pet snake the audition to be in the show?
Yeah, it was absolutely. It was his idea to sort of play with the imagery, I think, of what a snake represents. A snake being the representation of
biblical
evil,
too,
but also of wisdom. And of course, it's phallic as well in nature. So it worked well with some of the songs that Alice was doing. And snakes weren't bothered because snakes can't hear anyway. So they don't know what's going on half the time.
You know what? Do you believe that, Carrie-Anne? Because they always say, "Oh yeah, cats only see you in black and white, or they only dream in black and white." But wait, no one's ever talked to a cat. Maybe if a snake could speak, it'd be going, Stop doing that! I'm deaf. It's killing my ears."
Apparently, she did live to a ripe old age, the snake. But the other sort of something I took away from doing the research behind Killers and the Alice Cooper band in general as it evolved, the snake I perceive more on a level of the industry. The way it was shaping the Alice Cooper band into what they wanted it to sound like.
Mm-hmm. So maybe he battled the snake every day. Maybe Alice was the pure apple. Maybe Alice was Adam and Cheryl was Eve. Oh no, we're getting too biblical here. Hold on, folks.
There's lots of ways of interpreting it, but you could argue that as Alice and the band were evolving into a commercial entity that all of a sudden the record labels were very interested in. As soon as they identified that Alice Cooper was the main guy, I'm not saying, I mean, the rest of Alice Cooper band still love Alice, and we know they do, and they don't hold anything against Alice Cooper at all for the band split. But the record company certainly has something to do with the band split, and that's kind of Neil's take on it.
I see. Well, yeah, and Alice, I mean, very, well played, Alice, I would say. But he, they taking that moniker of like, well, I'll be Alice Cooper, and then there you go, boom,
Which,
it shifts over.
He took it on, and he took everything on his own there, and absolute credit to Alice Cooper for creating a whole identity for himself, and then finding new bandmates who understood what was going on in his head and what he wanted, which was horrible.
I'm always impressed at the lineups that Alice was able to procure over the years. I've been lucky to be enough of, be part of enough of them, but I'm talking about those ones that I learned from every single tour, whether it's, a song off From the Inside and we're picking out Rick Nielsen parts and Steve Lukather guitar parts, or you're doing the 80s sort of era where you can find great guitar combinations and great guitar work from Kane Roberts as well.
Absolutely.
But then to have that original guitar duo that I was, with Glenn and Michael, what a great guitar duo. But then to replicate that or take it up even to another level with Hunter Wagner, with those two, and then go on to make so many great albums. I'm always very impressed with the bands that Alice puts together. And I'm not saying because I was in one of those bands. I'm talking before me, pre-Roxie era. It's like I'm just always impressed to learn anything that Steve Hunter has played on, or the great late Dick Wagner. But did you learn any of those songs? Because you started playing guitar at the ripe old age of 16. Yeah. You had a crappy K guitar. Is that what it was? It wasn't that beautiful Gibson Explorer at that point. What is a K guitar?
I wish it was. That'd been my first guitar. Now, I actually went out to buy a typewriter for a course that I was due to start in September at college. And instead of coming back with a typewriter, I came back with a K guitar. And this horrible little amp that sounded like a load of bees having sex. And but I loved it. And
a load of bees having sex and an octopus playing drums. That sounds like a band right there. Let me tell you.
It could be. It's probably punk, I would have thought. But so that was that. And then went on.
Did you learn any songs off of Killer?
I did. I mean, one of the first ones I actually really got into was Desperado, because I love the light and shade. I'm just really got to me. And I mean, Alice dresses it up now as it's an ode to Jim Morrison, but I think it's darker than that. It's about loving someone who has a dark past, who has a dark nature, and that's something that's very appealing, especially to girls. Of course, we always like a bad boy.
Alice is the ultimate bad boy. I love that song. I get bummed out whenever that song gets suggested to get into the set list, because I want to do it so bad, and I feel that we do it really well, especially with this lineup. We get 3 guitars to sort of disperse the parts, but then we do it 1 or 2 times, and because Alice he's so much into a crowd response, that's more of a song that the crowd takes in on a stage song. It's not that they're giving out, because it's more of a type of a dark, like you said, moody type of weird type of Western, spaghetti Western, macabre type of vibe. And the few times that we've done it, that we say, hey, let's do Desperado. And Alice will go to the store during the day and he'll buy the big, cowboy hat. And he'll go with Cheryl. They'll go out shopping. He'll come back with these props. He'll come back with this big, Smith and Wesson 45 sort of thing. He's like, all right, I got the production ready for this song. We'll do it twice. And like, don't think the crowd really got into it that much. Let's do Lost in America.
It's a more, I suppose it could completely stall the show when you play it, because people then start to think, well, what's it mean? What's it about? Whereas
isn't that the beauty of a rock show? Make people think.
Beautiful. I think it is. It's a truly gorgeous song, and it was so well written.
Send me back in, Carrie-Anne. Send me back in, Coach. I'm gonna go campaign for that song. If you that are in the live chat right now want to hear Desperado sometime on the next tour, let's hear you in the comments. Let's see if you guys want the Alice Cooper band, the current lineup, to replicate Desperado just as great as the great original band did on the 1972 Killer album. We are here with Carrie-Anne Grove right now. We are going to take a quick break right now, Carrie-Anne, if you don't mind, and we will come back with a ton more questions, especially about what you're doing with your ROX Network, and perhaps we might dip our toe a little bit into the occult. Everybody, this is your choice, Mr. Vic. You can put any one of our sponsors up, any one of those commercials, because I'm hearing myself through these lovely biodynamic headphones and the microphone. You have a lovely microphone and a boom stand. So we're trying to be as professional as we can here in the trenches, folks. Appreciate you being around here. Hang out for 2 minutes and 2 seconds. We'll be right back. Come on. Hello, Ryan Roxie here, host of the In the Trenches podcast, and I also play guitar for Alice Cooper. I just wanted to take a second to talk about what mic you're hearing me speak through and what headphones I choose to listen to all my audio with. My go-to podcast and live performance mic is this TG V70 dynamic vocal mic. And when I'm recording acoustic stuff, I'll always mic it up with the biodynamic M160 double ribbon mic. I listen to everything with the DT 1770 Pro headphones unless I'm out and about. That's when the Eventho wireless headphones really make listening to music, podcasts, or any other audio app that's on my phone ultra high fidelity and latency free. Check out their official site or the links below in the description of this video to find out more about what makes Biodynamic the musician's choice in pro audio mics and headphones. Now, let's get back into the trenches for some more rock and roll. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the ride. Welcome back to In the Trenches. And I just thought of something, that's a different microphone that I have in the commercial, Vic. We have to retape that commercial, because now this is the M70 Pro. I got a new one. They sent me a new one, and it sounds sultry, doesn't it? It makes the low tones lower and the overall timbre quite nice. Welcome back to In the Trenches. I am your host, Ryan Roxie. We are here with Carrie-Anne Grove, talking about the documentary that she made called Alice Cooper Killer at 50, the snake and the tale of the octopus and the snake. Now, was that done did you and your husband have a hand in that, or was that all you?
My husband John is the Roxie's key researcher. That is really lovely. That was our wedding day.
I love it.
John is an avid researcher. If I send him on a mission to find out about things, he's like a dog with a bone, and he will dig and he will dig and he will dig until he finds things that we want to put on, or he'll find interesting facts. He also does a lot of the song selections for ROX Radio, because I'm more the historian for the classic rock up to 80s. Whereas John's very much what's now. He's very much into thrash
finding
metal,
out the new band,
metal, and and he can bring in the extreme elements for his show, which is Metal Madness. So
I heard that
we bounce off each other.
Now, does he call you Roxy, or do you have the nickname of Roxy? Who calls you Roxy? What is that? Because I was told that. Yeah.
Roxy came about because when we first set up ROX Network, we used to go out and do interviews with different people, and we regularly talk to a vocalist called Kim Izzard, and she's a solo vocalist from West Midlands, and we've got to know her well over the years. And she started the nickname. She said, "Oh, well, you're from ROX, so I'll call you Roxy from now on." And it just, how things just stick. And I thought, oh,
Well,
fair
with the
enough,
name
Roxy.
Roxy, I know exactly how things stick. I'm the one that invented that for myself many, many years ago, and I'm hoping that it would stick because it kind of, for me, it just seemed like a nice abbreviation of my full born
Absolutely, yeah.
given name that has way more syllables and way more letters into it. But with the ROX interview series that you're doing now currently with you and your husband, what is your unique approach that you have? Perhaps it is because your husband's into the heavier stuff, you're into more classic rock or and newer stuff, but like, what is that unique approach that you guys bring to the table?
What we do, we tend to have team meetings, because we've also got a lady who's very much into 60s, so she can bring in the real sort of roots of rock and Americana and blues, and we identify stuff that needs telling. It's a story that needs talking about, and then we take it from there. And John will do the investigation and find out what's going on and who's behind it all, and find the relevant links for me, and then we'll start putting it together. Some stuff's just short interviews. If there's something that we feel a musician or a band want to talk about or want to share. I mean, I was talking to KK. I did an interview with KK down in the other week, because it's not in the best of places at the moment with Judas Priest, but that's another matter.
Of course.
But, we do stuff like that as well, but sometimes we like to really go in in depth.
Now, when I had KK on, and we can maybe compare notes here on interviews and stuff, I was sort of preparing myself for a lot of priest bashing, a lot of bad blood. I did not get that with my interview.
No.
Maybe I wasn't, because I wasn't looking for it, but maybe because it's truly not there. And all it would truly take is a little bit of communication, a little bit of good old communication. Because we just had Richie Faulkner, who kind of, the other day when he was on the podcast, said, you know what, if I just step outside the picture of everything, I think these two parties could work it out, without having to, or maybe I could help be a bit of an ambassador or sort of a diplomat in that sense. But it doesn't seem like it's that far away from something resolving. I don't know.
It certainly could be. It certainly could be. From what KK has told me on and off the record, yes, he's got no beef with Judas Priest as such. He's just a little hurt that he's wasn't asked to be back as part of the anniversary celebrations, and but he's got his own band now, KK Priest, and they are damn fine, I have to say. And who knows? You know what it's like in rock and roll. Nothing's ever set in stone. So we could well see a reunion. We could well see one.
That's like David Lee Roth. I don't know why I'm quoting myself. A lot of David Lee Roth quotes these lately, but I just saw last night that he said, I'm doing, a couple of years ago, he said, I'm announcing my final tour, and it's going to be called David Lee Roth, the final tour until it isn't. And that it is, right? You're right. We'll do a final tour until next year. You produce a weekly radio show on ROX radio station as well. What's the story there?
Again, because we like to. Well, I've got my show, the Roxy Show, on a Friday night, but because ours are all stored online, people can download and stream 24/7, so they're not limited by any time constraints. But there's my show, there's my husband's show, which is more black metal and thrash, on a Saturday night. We've also got syndicated shows as well. So we've got a DJ that does a 60s show. We've got a DJ that does the greatest hits of each year from the 70s. So we try and mix it all up.
Maybe there's a little home for, I don't know, Vic. I'm listening to this, and maybe you're backstage listening to this as well. Maybe there's a little home for us for a little bit of in the trenches. I'm not sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
There you go.
Absolutely.
You heard it here first. Maybe it's a scoop. I don't know.
That
And
is
there's
one of
the
the
picture
photos.
of, of Ozzy Osbourne. He's not in a wedding dress, though,
Find
Vic.
the one with
Yeah.
Ozzy Osbourne and Motley Crue in the toilets.
Yeah.
That one
Vic just Googled Ozzy Osbourne toilet, and that was the first one that came up.
Yeah.
All right. Vic, how is that going to get us on the ROX radio if we don't get the one with the wedding, in the wedding dress? We got to have that. So speaking of photos and that eloquent photo that Vic just posted up right there. There you go. There's Alice Cooper and Boa Derek on the cover of ROX magazine. Look at this. ROX Media is everywhere. Maybe ROX Media with Ryan Roxie as a little ambassador and in the trenches. What do you say? I don't know. We're campaigning. We're networking. We're doing it all. The thing is about these visuals, you're into photography, just like our colorful and storied producer. Wait, that obviously wasn't my words. That was Joey's words. Our colorful and storied producer, Vic Chalfant. We understand that you, Carrie-Anne, are taking photography very seriously. Have you combined your passion for rock music with your professional competence in photography? You can tell I did not write that question because that is completely above my pay grade for actually verbiage. But tell us about your photography.
Absolutely. I think the two go together in a lot of ways. I love action photography. I love live photography. I love catching those moments at not just on stage, but backstage and while the band's warming up, and all those really live moments. And I love catching them. It's almost like somebody catching wildlife or something like that. It's like, yes, I've got that image, and then manipulating it until it looks like something that I like and the musicians like, which doesn't always necessarily mean the same thing, but but it's much more about the candid imagery. I find that much more interesting for me as a photographer, but also for our viewers and our readers. I think that's
and you would love before a
see.
pre-show. You would love it pre-show and Alice Cooper show in our dressing room, in the guys' dressing room, which is me, Glenn, myself, Glenn, and Beasto, Chuck Garrick, and Tommy Hendrickson, because we're just walking around kind of being idiots pretty much all the time. And usually Tommy catches a good photo of me in any sort of given bathroom. I'm not on the toilet like Ozzy was, but I am. We do a series of shots in whenever we can find a dressing room that has a nice shower. I don't know. We find something about those tiled backgrounds being good. So I'll take a photo on his camera. He'll take a photo on my camera, which we actually mean phone. So it works out good that way. But nothing like our colorful and storied producer, Vic Chalfant, who actually does take a lot of great photos, live photos of us, and he does seem to capture that live moment. Yeah, a lot of photos that we normally have on the show when it's featuring one of our band members, one of our current lineup band members, or anything basically Alice Cooper, Vic will put a picture that he's shot pretty much up if he can, if the opportunity's there. And there might be an opportunity, folks, to see some more Vic Chalfant shots, which will be tomorrow on the Reignite podcast, because I will be I'm going a little self-promotion here, Carrie-Anne. Sorry about that, but I do have to drop it because I saw in the comments that they were talking about the Reignite podcast. I will be on the Reignite podcast tomorrow. Hopefully we'll see you there. It's going to be, I think, 2:00 or 3:00 UK European time. Just check our Instagram stories and check all of our social medias. Of course, Instagram is where we frequent the most. That's at Ryan Roxie. Let's talk about how people can get in touch with Carrie-Anne, you and your social media, and how they can find out about ROX Productions, the ROX Media Group, and you yourself. Do we have, Vic? There you
Those,
go.
yeah,
Look at
those are
it.
the best ways to get hold of myself and anybody who we're essentially a group of volunteers. We don't get any money for ROX. We don't get a pay slip for ROX. So it's a network of volunteers. So that's the best way to get in touch with any of us or find out about what we're doing. And from there, from the website, particularly roxnetwork.co.uk, you can access all of our YouTube videos. You can also access ROX Radio directly from there, and the ROX magazine, of course, as well. It's all online, and we give it all away for free because that's what we're all about. We don't make any money. We don't care. It's all about the love of rock at the end of the day.
Well, there it is. Carrie-Anne definitely passing the torch of rock on to everyone. And Vic, if you can put those links up real quick, I'll say them for the audio broadcast people. That's at Instagram, Carrie-Anne Grove. You know what? The hyphen thing, that's what was messing me up all week when I was trying to tag you, those little hyphen things.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you right now, the place to go, www.roxnetwork.co.uk. That probably has all of the links right there.
Absolutely, it does, to our Instagram as well, where you'll see all of the photography that we do, live bands, and there's loads of videos of live gigs as well. And we try to put at least 2 or 3 songs up from every show we go to, so that people can see, especially new bands. I mean, we will go and also photograph and record a song by the starter band, the guys who open the whole thing, because you never know, you really never know whether they could be the next big thing.
They might, and you know what? Here's the chance right now, Carrie-Anne. Are there any bands right now that you've been checking out, that you've been taking these low light photography shots of, and taking these capturing the moment type of shots? Any bands from headliners to complete openers that you find is perhaps a diamond in the rough?
One band that I really think are amazing, I know I'm biased because they're from the Midlands, but they are called Devil Fire, and they were picked up by Planet Rock and radio shows a couple of years ago, and then over COVID they kind of dropped off. But they are an amazing blend of the cult and classic rock era, with some nice, juicy ballads thrown in for good measure. And the guys are so photogenic, and they've got that onstage charisma. So if you're listening out there, people, go and check out a band called Devil Fire. And another hot band is called Mercy and Fire. They're brand new, and they have got all the hunger and anger of early Alice Cooper. There's elements of grunge. There's early elements of punk and proto metal. They're just so good.
Devil Fire, folks, and Mercy and Fire, right?
Mercy and Fire. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I love it. So there's 2 strong endorsements from Carrie-Anne Grove. We have actually now someone that we'd like to pay tribute to, because we think she's fire as well. It's our fan of the week right now. So Vic, let's run the fan of the week, and I will introduce our big fan. Here at In the Trenches, we are always about laying it out for the fans, and Ashley O'Neill is our fan of the week. Every single week, she's been supportive. She's been gracious. She's always there. We see her at the shows. She's coming to 2 shows on 2 different continents on this next Alice Cooper run that we embark on next week. So thank you very much, Ashley O'Neill. You are our fan of the week. And if you are interested on being a fan of the week, all you have to do is support what we do, spread it to all your friends, and get everybody to hit that subscribe button, which I never can point to the right direction, but it's a subscribe button somewhere down there. And just hit that subscribe button, or get a friend to do it. And Another way to show your support and to be eligible to be a fan of the week is to support the ROX Network and Carrie-Anne Grove and her husband, what they're doing together. And you know what? Go check out Devil Fire and tell them that Carrie-Anne and In the Trenches podcast sent you. How about that?
Fantastic.
And Mercy and Grove. How about that? And as well, now it's time to go a little bit. Well, actually, you know what? Should we ask a fan of the week? Should we let the people speak? Because we just had the fan of the week. Yeah, it's time for you people to speak. It's time for you people to ask a question for Carrie-Anne Grove. What do you say?
Fire away.
So there's just one question today, and you'll see the way I ask it and the way it's worded that it's obviously not me asking the question, but it's somebody else. But it's actually storied and colorful. I will give you a little hint. You say that on your website that the 80s rock and metal is your favorite and your specialty. But how would you compare music quality of the 80s versus the 70s? Or is the quality a bad word to use it when it comes to music?
Fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking. That is a really good question.
That is actually from Joey, our one of our amazing sort of Svengalis that pulls a lot of the strings and helps us get a lot of the great artists.
Very astute question. It is indeed. The 70s and 80s sound and production values were very different, I feel. The 70s was all about catching that raw sound in the studio, 4 or 5 guys playing live, recording live, and then having the odd echo or reverb later added on and some compressor for warmth. The 80s was very much the era of the producer, and although there have been some amazing songs produced in the 80s. Some of the finest rock and metal songs ever made were in the 80s. Some did become very, very overproduced. And I'm sure Alice Cooper would agree that once he started getting pushed down the route of Poison and Bed of Nails, and there must have been quite a struggle at the time for him to keep the raw rock and roll edge of his music and his lyrics, when you've got producers and sound engineers going, let's add a bit more synth, let's add a little bit more soft, let's soften the edges. And of course, once things started to get recorded directly onto digital, we lost all of that warmth. They had to add the warmth on using technology from the studio when they had it in the first place just by recording on analog.
By the take, yeah, and the vibe. And do you think that because of the technology, things got the cleaner they got, the less vibier they got?
They did, yeah. They lost. That was, of course, the era of the power ballad. And yeah, which I love a lot of power ballads. I am Winger's #1 fan. I am honored and part-time ashamed to say, but I just love Winger. But they've done some power ballads that they now hate themselves because they're.
You were probably only 17 when you first fell in love with him, though.
I was, and it was the hairy chest. I've got to admit, I first noticed him actually when he toured with Alice. Because he was on the Nightmare Returns tour with Kane. And
Love at First Bite, I guess that would be.
And I thought, wow.
Well, I'll be really honest with you. Winger was just on this Monsters of Rock cruise that we did just recently with Alice Cooper. Thank you, everyone that came out to the Monsters of Rock. A lot of great bands participated in it. Even one of the bands that we're going to be going on tour in just a couple weeks, Buck Cherry, they were on that cruise as well. But Winger was one of the bands at the cruise, and I got to be honest with you, they best sounding band of the cruise.
They do kick ass.
Yeah. It was a really good show, and of course, I have a special place in my heart for Reb Beach. He was the first guitar player I ever played with in the Alice Cooper band. So, and such a great player, as well as Paul Taylor, and of course, I mean, what can you say about Kip? What can you say about Kip except that Kip wouldn't say about himself?
There he says the man.
See, I do a great Kip Winger, don't you think, folks? I really do a great Kip Winger. Hey, Kip, what's going on, baby? I ain't phoning it in right now, buddy. I ain't phoning it in. I'm actually giving it my all. So here we go. We've found out a few things about Carrie-Anne. Found out that her ROX Network is definitely helping out newer bands, as well as carrying on the tradition and spirit of more classic rock bands as well. So thank you for everything that you do. And
it's always our pleasure.
But we've also found out in our research that you are a noble of Daneland.
I am.
So indeed. Of course we want to know more. What does that mean?
Well, I was born into paganism. I was born a pagan, and I'm actually an elder witch as well, because I worked my way up the ranks. No, I'm quite harmless, really.
No, but how? Whoa, okay, Renaissance. This is not at a Renaissance fair. This is something more.
That is a ritual. Yeah, that was a ritual that was done.
So in your studies and work, you have been very much interested in the occult. In fact, sources tell us that you have held the position of an elder witch. We have to hear about all this. How does noble of Daneland and in being an elder witch factor into your orbit right now?
In Britain, there's been a long tradition of witchcraft, as of course in the United States, of course, as well. And it has still carried on very much into modern times. It's now recognized in Britain as a religion again, thank goodness. And I worked my way up the ranks of witchcraft because of my experience and because of my training. And after you've worked for so long as a witch, you then carry the title witch elder, which involves a ceremony and gifts are given to you, and you get a crystal ball, and it's a wonderful ceremony. And then you are a witch elder. So essentially you're put into early retirement, and because you've done your years of service as a witch.
All right.
I still do potions and crystals and everything when people need it, but I no longer run a club.
Potions. You said potions, Carrie-Anne.
Yes, you heard it on here. Witches still do magic potions.
Okay, now I have to ask, because this will go into another area that we like to infiltrate in the show, is never let the truth get in the way of a good story, or fact or fiction. If I say a word, Ouija boards, fact or fiction?
Fact.
Ouija boards are a fact. I love it. Okay, so are you being the elder witch that you are? Have you held that many rituals involving a Ouija board?
Never.
Why is that? Does that get sort of passed on to someone else? Is there a Ouija specialist? How does that work?
No, not at all. It's there is a clear divide between mediumship, which is the contacting of the dead, and seances and Ouija boards and all the rest of it. Whereas witchcraft is very much keeping the dead on their side of the veil, as we call it. We consider it a bit of a faux pas to start pestering the dead because we can't remember where we kept our keys. And because you believe it or not, we do get people ask stuff like that and say, I've lost the house keys. Can you ask my granddad? I say, really? How will your granddad know where your keys are? So we don't really, some witches do, but on a personal level, I don't approve, because you never know where that could lead you, because they do work.
Don't pester the dead.
Yeah.
That's sort of a witch's creed.
Yeah, we tend to leave the dead where they are, and we wait till Samhain or Halloween, as Americans more commonly know it, October the 31st, and that's our night when we can talk to the dead. We hold a dumb supper, and if they can cross the veil then freely, and we will talk to them, we will share wine with them and food with them.
So your Halloween celebrations are completely different
Absolutely, yeah.
than some of the ones that I've gone on, because I mean, last time I think I dressed up like, that one costume was really ridiculous. I dressed up as a sperm. I don't see you guys going to costume parties and dressing up as something ridiculous. I see you guys actually having more of a
It's
serious
yeah,
type of
yeah.
ritual on that
Yeah,
day.
it's essentially the original New Year. October the 31st was the end of the traditional year. There was only 10 months before the Romans and the Gregorians stuck in 2 more months to make it 12. So it's for us, it's a combination of Christmas, New Year's Day, and all the rest thrown into one. So it's very much a celebration, but also a remembrance of people that we've lost. But yeah, it's a very, very special time for us.
And I saw very quickly that Vic had put some pictures up, and I think you already answered this question with our talk so far. Potions and crystals, those
Mhm.
are facts.
Facts,
Facts. Those are
facts.
definitely facts. All right. There's a lot of facts are happening on the podcast today. I might as well just throw one out there. It has to be fiction.
Go for it.
Flying on a broomstick.
Yes,
Fact.
fact.
Oh, all right. There we
But
go.
but not for the reason that you might think.
Okay, please explain this one, because I was for sure that I had one fiction in there, and that like the broomstick had been
Not at
some.
all. Not
Oh
at
boy.
all. Um, all witches have a broomstick, and we call them a besom. And it is just a broomstick. You can get them from a hardware store anywhere. It's nothing special. We then give it a name and we dress it up. We put ribbons around them, and it becomes very much part of who you are in life. It's always by the front door, and it faces down if you want visitors, and you face it up if you basically want to tell someone to go and do one. No, they're not welcome. But in the old times, have you heard of something called flying ointment?
A flying
We're going back
ointment.
into the land of potions here.
Okay.
Flying ointment was an ancient cream that witches used to make, and it was deadly, absolutely toxic as hell. And it used to cause hallucinations, and it used to make them highly sexually aroused, and the blood pressure goes up. And this cream they used to rub on the broomstick and then ride the broomstick. I
And
I needn't go into
that
too
was their
much graphics of
experience.
how they rode the
Rode
broomstick,
rode the broomstick.
to keep it under 18s, and because they were hallucinating like hell. I mean, it's the sensation is a mixture of 72 vodkas and magic mushrooms. So, for all intents and purposes, they really do believe that they're flying, and they hallucinate. And then when they wake up the next morning, they swear blind they've met in a woodland and kissed the devil's ass, and all kinds of weird, wonderful stories come out of all the things that they did during the night as they desperately try and sober up.
You've heard the
So you
term
heard it here.
diamonds are a girl's best friend. Broomsticks are a witch's best friend.
They certainly were in the old days, yes.
Now, I guess the broomstick would be today's equivalent would be either a rabbit or a fleshlight, I guess,
Yeah, well,
for a male
that's
witch.
where the idea came from, pretty much.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, with this, knowing that you were born into paganism and you are an elder witch, does your husband did that make him a wizard by proxy, or would that just, or is he part, like part of the Addams family where they'd have the one cousin that didn't appear to be part of the Addams family, or
Not at all. No, we don't use the term wizard.
Okay, so he's not a wizard.
No, that's very Harry Potter.
Okay, well, it's also a great band too.
A witch is a witch. So men are male witches. And when I met my husband to be back then, he was so intrigued with witchcraft. He says, I want to learn. I want to be a witch. I want to marry you as a witch. I said, great. That's right. I'll teach you. And he's now a 3rd degree. He's a high priest. And because he's being John, he studied.
Now, when you say 3rd degree, now how many degrees are there to get
there are
to
5?
Okay, and it has nothing to do with like belts or anything like that. You don't get a different color belt like you would in martial arts, or
No,
do you?
it's you're probably seeing the pentagram.
Yeah, well, I saw actually. If we go back to that photo that you had of the two of you and your husband, you actually were wearing one.
Yeah, that's right. The pentagram is very symbolic of your rank at the time. When I wore that, I was a 1st degree. So it's a standard pentagram like that. That means I'm a 1st degree witch. So if I see witches higher ranking than myself, I should bow or curtsy or at least show my respect. Then you get the 2nd degree where the pentagram's turned upside down. And that's the common one you see in black metal bands
or Motley Crue.
Yeah. But which a lot of people would say is the symbol of Baphomet and things like that. But it's not at all. It refers to your learning, your education in witchcraft originally. And then when you get your 3rd degree, there's a little triangle that kind of sits on top of the pentagram, which then says, I'm a 3rd degree. I'm a high priest, or I'm a high priestess. So I'm the boss of a coven. And you have
that's what makes you basically the elder witch, or
yeah, you serve as a high priest or high priestess for some years, running covens, teaching others. And then if your 4th is very contemplative, almost like, if you can imagine, Buddhism or Taoism, where you go very much into yourself and explore yourself and your place in the universe. And the 5th is just a recognition of your retirement.
Aha. So you have a pension.
I wish.
Yeah, I wish I had a pension for being a witch. So one thing we have proven, we had so many facts here that I myself was like thinking, of course that's good. She's going to say a broom is a fiction, but the one thing I'm glad we did clear up: wizards, fiction, completely fiction. Thank you. There you go.
Yeah.
Thank you for educating me on all this stuff. I'm very interested in it, and it's been just as entertaining as talking about the documentary Alice Cooper, Killer at 50, the tale between the octopus and the snake
album.
Now, the one thing that, if we can go back to that picture that you had the pentagram on, I will say there is some sort of corollary that I can see, because here in Sweden, there's a paganism type of ritual called midsummer.
That's right.
And everybody wears, or a lot of the females wear the sort of headband that you see. What does that signify?
Generally speaking, you will wear one of those when you are a maiden. Usually the young girls of the villages will wear those to signify that they are available for marriage, essentially, which I was on the day. I was far from a maiden, but we won't go into that. But essentially, I was available for the day to be married to my future husband. So the flowers was maiden flowers. So That's where it comes from. So usually summer is the common time for weddings. So maidens generally put the flowers on to say, "I'm interested in getting a husband," and then the men usually run like hell.
I think your whole story of not being a maiden at that day or was probably, at an Iron Maiden concert years before, literally at it.
Literally.
Carrie-Anne, I love the fact that we've been able to talk about so many things across the board. I brought it up a little bit as a, let me just dip our toe into it, and then at the very end, I'm like, and I can see in our live chat audience, they're very, very interested as well. Now, is that your cat, or is
That's
that
that's our cat. That's my witch's familiar, which is another fact.
what witches have? Black cat
do have a familiar.
What now? A familiar is
Essentially, it's what a witch talks to. It can be a cat or a rat or an eagle or an owl or anything that they feel drawn to. Usually, a black cat. You've seen Sabrina the Teenage Witch. I'm sure it's a big show.
Yeah.
She talks to the cat Salem. Very true. We do talk to the cats.
You know what? I might be a witch. I talked to my gray cat Cindy, and I'm going to post something in just a couple minutes of how I am a witch. Is that what it is? Nick? I'm a witch now. That's a fact.
They are very good listeners, I have to say, cats.
I'm telling you, my cat listens to me. My wife says that I talk to my cat way too much, but I mean, she just came back in the house, and we've been having these long conversations. Wow. Okay. It's a lot of things to reevaluate, but you know what? We have up until next week. I have a whole week now to get prepared for this tour as well. Alice Cooper's going back out on tour, folks. And we are going to be playing a lot of the songs off the Killer album, as well as a bunch of other Alice Cooper albums that we know you.
And don't forget, girls and boys, Desperado. We want
Desperado. If you want to hear that is one of the things. If you want people in the chat, in the comments, in the chat, if you want to hear Desperado on the next part of this year's tour, because we're starting the first leg basically of 2022 right now. We're actually, did we have one already? No, I don't know. I'm so confused now. We've done a little bit of a leg, but now we're going out to do this next leg in the States and Canada. Hopefully we'll see you out there. If you want to hear Desperado, you got to DM me, start following, and basically, you know what? Support Carrie-Anne, of course, but let's hear it from you guys if you want to hear Desperado. And up next week, while I will be on the road, we will have a guest. Of course, we will have Stacy David Blades as our guest. There you
Very
go.
cool.
That is next week as we have as we will be diving into the trenches. I know he's not a witch. He's a rock and roller. But do you think that a lot of these bands that have that sort of market themselves being, the dark side and occult, do you think that that a lot of them are they're not completely educated the way you are? Or do you think it's more sometimes with some of these bands, it's more of just a way to grab an audience or to shock an audience, or do you feel that
a lot of it is the shock value? I mean, don't get me wrong. There are a lot of musicians who are into the occult, and some are acknowledged Satanists, for example. Some do definitely dabble or have dabbled in the past. I mean, Jimmy Page is famous for his avid interest in the occult and the works of Aleister Crowley. So it's always been there. I mean, ever since Robert Johnson, with the whole
Crossroads.
Yeah, Crossroads.
Down at the Crossroads.
And ever
baby.
since then, it's been, if you want to make it big in rock and roll, you've got to go to the Crossroads or a Crossroads.
Yeah.
And in some ways, maybe it is. Maybe if you want to be a musician, there is a deal that you make with I'm not going to say the devil because that's not really who it is, but you make a deal with the record industry and producers and mixers and editors and
With the
record
snake.
labels and
You make a deal with the snake,
the
perhaps.
snake, and you just got to make sure you don't get bit in the ass.
I got to go talk to my familiar right now. Dude, I got to go talk to my cat's gray. So I mean,
a cat is a cat.
A cat is a familiar, and she does kind of have an owl face, an owl head. I love it. Oh man. I was gonna say about. I mean, I'm so now enthralled with this rock and roll and the occult as well. But what was I going to say about Jimmy Page? Is that, yeah, I mean, so many of these bands they talk about it, but perhaps they're not as like I said, educated. Like Jimmy Page's interest in Aleister Crowley. Would Aleister Crowley be considered a high priest at that point, or is he even more?
He was indeed, yes.
Okay. See, so now I've learned about the 3 degrees and the 5 degrees. You don't get a pension if you're a 5th degree witch.
No,
Sorry.
no.
You know, maybe you guys should form a union, all you 5th degree witches
I'm all
out there.
for that. I'm absolutely all for a witches union when we do get some kind of pension. But yeah, I mean, at the time, but you're right. A lot of musicians do dabble in it, and sometimes they can get themselves in all sorts of psychological messes because they start getting into Ouija boards and into seances, and once they start dropping a bit of the old paper, then you know, all sorts of things come into their heads.
What's dropping the paper? Tell me what that is.
A bit of LSD.
Ah, that's when it
that
opens
interacts
door,
with the psyche.
window.
So yeah, so they can imagine they can see all sorts of things, not unlike witches on broomsticks. But
which we did find out was a fact, which was on that, which they would put that ointment, which is a potion, folks, on the broomstick, and then they would just fleshlight all the way to Arkansas.
Absolutely. And next thing you know, they wake up in the morning wondering where the hell they've been. But yeah, but then again, you've got just as many rock stars who are Christian. You've got just as many rock stars who are Jewish.
One that you made a movie about.
Yeah.
One that you just made a documentary about with Alice Cooper at 50.
He's absolutely a dedicated Christian, and I've got a great deal of respect for him for that, because that's his belief system, and it obviously gives him a great deal of strength. And really and truly, that's the value of any religion. If it gives you strength and it gives you a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose and a moral compass, it doesn't really matter what religion you are.
I'm going to look a little bit more favorably on witches from now on because of this talk that we've had, Carrie-Anne, because you did actually say that you know, there is a little bit of a moralistic line that you would rather not go over to the other side and disturb the dead, unless it's a Halloween party, which your Halloween parties are completely different than the Halloween parties that I've been.
We do abide by a strict code of conduct. There's a lot of things that we just simply won't do. Not dissimilar to the 10 Commandments. I mean, there is the wicked reed, which is essentially the same sort of thing, that we don't do any harm to anybody, because we believe that 3 things will happen back. So it's a self-controlling mechanism in a way. If you do something good for somebody,
3 good things will happen.
3 good things back. So it's in your interest to do.
I like that 1 for 3.
If you do
1 for 3 deal, that's a tipping point, because 1 for 2, a lot of people will say, it's only, I'm only getting 1 for 2. 1 for 3, people are going to definitely, you know what? I'm happy to. I'm thinking that you have your coven like tight and in order. You have it all.
Certainly did, yes. Yeah.
And well, like I said, good luck to ROX Media Group as well.
Thank you very much,
doing
Ryan.
the great work that you're doing, and of course, we will promote Alice Cooper 50, the tale of the octopus and the snake. And you know what, folks? This has been one of those more than interesting interviews that it started one place, ended in another, but we all did it together. And again,
Absolutely. It's been so much fun, Ryan. Thank you.
it's been great having you, Carrie-Anne. Again, big shout out to Ashley O'Neill. If we can put her picture up just one last time. Our fan of the week, Ashley. There you are. Thanks again every single week. We will see you a couple times on this next tour. And hopefully we'll see all of you out there on the road with Alice Cooper in the next few months, whether it's
Absolutely.
in the U.S. or Canada. And we're coming there to the Midlands.
Yeah, we will certainly be there.
And you know what? We're going to be on tour with The Cult.
See, it's all connected.
The occult meets the cult. I love it. We will talk more later. Everybody, again, next week our guest is Stacey David Blades, and Carrie-Anne Grove has been our guest today. Folks, enjoy yourselves. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next week somewhere out on the road. One thing before you all leave, it's good to be the early bird. It's good to be the early bird. I'm going to go talk to my familiar right now, and stay tuned for that. Carrie-Anne Grove, thanks for being part of In the Trenches. Thank you very much, everybody in the RGA. Until next week, enjoy the ride. See ya.
Peace out.
In the Trenches with Ryan Roxie.